lovely people, and welcome to Owen's Mind, a light-hearted trip through the contents of my head and the world in general. It is Wednesday the 15th of January. My name is Owen, and here is what is on my mind today. So first and foremost, apologies, this is not going to be a full-length video. Time's kind of got away from me today, and I don't have time to actually put together a main topics video. But I didn't want to let the day pass without putting some content up, so today is just going to be a quick single story that's making the news. I wanted to give my thoughts on it, okay? And the story is this. It is Stephen King's comments. Why I think they've been taken out of context and why I'm going to defend them in the context that I feel they should have been viewed as. So for those of you who don't know, this is on Sky News today. This is on the Sky News app, which you can't really see on there, but there is. That's very glared out. I do apologise. So Stephen King has been criticised over painful Oscar diversity comments, okay? So he's come under fire saying the issue of diversity should not be a factor for Oscar voters. Okay, so these are his exact comments, okay? So in his tweet, this was all based on a tweet, Stephen King wrote, "As a writer, I am allowed to nominate in just 3 categories: Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Original Screenplay. For me, the issue, the diversity issue, as it applies to individual actors and directors, anyway, did not come up. That said, I would never consider that diversity in matters of art, only quality. It seems to me that to do otherwise would be wrong." So those are his exact comments. And there's been a lot of a backlash. So Selma, and When This Year's directed, Ava DuVernay, reposted the tweet and said, "When you wake up, meditate, stretch, reach for your phone and check on the world and see a tweet from someone you admire that is so backward and ignorant you want to go back to bed." Okay, Gabino Iglesias, Stephen King, every writer of colour reading this, including me, has had to work 10 times harder to get the same recognition opportunities straight white male authors get from the start. Same goes for women. LGBTQIA writers and other underrepresented voices. Diversity matters. It matters a lot. In reply to King's post, Difficult Women and Bad Feminist writer Gay said, "As a fan, this is painful to read from you. It implies that diversity and quality cannot be synonymous. They are not separate things. Quality is everywhere, but most industries only believe in quality from one demographic, and now here you are." Okay, so a lot of backlash against his comments. I don't think it's warranted. I really don't, and this is why I think his comments have been taken completely out of context. Because what he's basically saying is, it's not an issue. The quality should speak for itself, and I completely agree with him. What I think he's saying is, look, if you produce something of the quality, it will get recognition, regardless of your background, regardless of your age, your gender, your sexual orientation, whatever it happens to be, your ethnicity. If you produce something of quality, that quality will be recognised. You know, based on the quality, not the person creating it. I think that is the very epitome of diversity. It's like, it doesn't matter what background you're from. If you produce something worthy of recognition, you will get that recognition. And I think that's exactly how it should be. And I think that's what he meant. I could be wrong, but based on what I've read, what I interpret the comments as, he's basically saying the quality matters. You know, produce something of quality and it should get a fair shout. Okay, now again, that's in a perfect world, but I think that's what he's trying to say. If you are going to say, look, you know, as a white guy in Hollywood, you get far more opportunities, that's very, very true. There's no denying that. However, aiming that at a comment regards the Oscars it's far too late in the game. The Oscars can only be chosen based on films that are submitted. If the films submitted in an Oscar year are 90% produced, starring, written by straight white men, that's what they have to pick from. So having it at the Oscars when they've got this limited kind of pool of diversity to pick from, it just seems backwards. You need to target it right at the beginning. You need to be going to studios and saying you need to be given opportunities for diverse writers, directors, artists. You know, you need to finance movies created by, for, and starring a far more diverse demographic. Because then, the more that is out there, the more the Oscars are going to get to pick from. They're going to get a greater diverse field to actually pick their runners and riders from. If they haven't got that, then they can't pick from it. So targeting the Oscars just seems like you're targeting the end point. You need to be targeting the beginning. Now, and this is the thing, if the Oscars start championing films from a more diverse set of creators, you could then argue, yeah, then studios are going to be more willing to greenlight projects by more diverse creators because, you know, they get an Oscar buzz, so there's generally more of an interest. However, here's why I disagree with that. Number one, an Oscar-winning film does not necessarily mean a financially successful film. There is many movies that have won great amount of Oscars and made nothing financially. Obviously, there's the huge blockbusters which we know do that. Titanic made a huge amount of money, won a lot of Oscars. Lord of the Rings, same. The Avengers series, same. Black Panther, same. You know, they win Oscars and they've made a lot of money. There is a lot of Oscar nominated and quality and Oscar winning films which didn't do financially well, and it's the financial side that studios are going to want to look at. That's what's going to put a film into motion. Is it going to be financially successful? It's going to be bankable. That's what Hollywood is. It's money. No one's going to put millions into a film if it's not going to make that money back. So that's number one, where I don't think the argument that, you know, if the Oscars championed more diverse people, more diverse creators would get movies greenlit. I don't necessarily agree with that. Also, it goes back to King's original point. You cannot give awards to creators based on their, you know, to fill a diversity quota if the quality is not there, because then it just undermines the whole industry. You need to make sure the quality is there. You need to give the Oscars a wider pool to pick from in regards to diversity of creators and artists and actors and actresses and all that kind of thing. So for that to happen, it has to happen way before that. It cannot happen at the Oscars. You cannot have a go at the Oscars going, you picked a load of white men for these films, and they're like, 90% of the films submitted to us were produced starring, you know, straight white men. So chances are, statistically, that's what's going to get picked. We cannot just pick from the other 10% because it's cool or it's going to make us appear really diverse if the quality is not up to that standard. So you need to be right back at the beginning, at the finances. You need to get these movies put into production so that there's more diverse movies actually getting to the Oscars. Targeting the Oscars seems pointless. Anyway, we're getting a bit off topic. But back to King's comments. I do think that what he was getting at is, you know, when it comes to art, quality is king. It's like anything. You know, judge me on the quality of my work, not the colour of my skin, not my age, not my sexual orientation, not how I choose to identify this, that, or the other. Judge me on the quality of my work. And if you judge me fairly on the quality of my work, and if my work is of a quality whereby you will reward it, regardless of me as a creator, I think that is the epitome of acceptance and diversity. It's like, give us something that's Oscar worthy, you'll get an Oscar. If it's better than everybody else that's been submitted, you will get your Oscar. And if you're male, female, black, white, you know, whatever it happens to be, you'll be treated fairly the same as everybody else. That, I think, that's the goal. Is it not the goal? Everyone is treated equally. You know, you produce the quality, you get the reward. That's like everything in life. Now, I do understand that it's much harder for a lot of diverse cultures and groups to get that representation in the first place. Yes, absolutely. And yes, there needs to be more money and more support and more movies getting greenlit from a wider variety of creators. Absolutely. But again, hitting the Oscars at that point, it's too late, because you're targeting a group who judges the films that have already been made. We need to make sure there's more movies getting made from the groups you're trying to champion. And again, I think King's comments, I think they've been taken ludicrously out of context. I think it is very much, he's saying, judge them on the quality, regardless of who created it. You know, if it's written and directed by a woman, if it's of the quality, then that's the best film. If that's the best film of the year, that's the best film of the year. You know, the kind of criticism almost implies that these movies are being chosen over other movies, that people are picking these movies created by, you know, straight white men, as opposed to, like, they're purposely avoiding movies that are created by more diverse, you know, people. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's just they just don't have a big enough pool to pull from yet. And hopefully that will change, and it needs to change. You know, everybody, the world is a huge place with thousands and thousands of different, you know, types, different ethnicities, different nationalities, different genders, different, you know, people of different sexual orientation, all this, and it all needs representing, because these all people who go to the movies and they want to see themselves represented. There was a huge thing when Black Panther came out that a lot of, you know, young black men and women were going, great, I can finally see, I've now got a superhero who looks like me. And it was a big deal, and it is a big deal. And it shouldn't be like that. That should not be people should not have to come out and go, finally. It should have always been the case, but it wasn't, and it isn't, and it still isn't. So yes, much, much, much more needs to be done, admittedly. But I don't think having a go at King's comments kind of pushes that target forward. And I do think that I do think his comments were absolutely fine to me. I mean, I may be completely misreading them, but from what I read, he's basically saying, you know, diversity. When he says diversity has no place in art, I don't think he means, you know, that you should leave it to us straight white men and keep, you know, and step back. If that was the case, then absolutely he should be, you know, had a go at for that kind of comment. But I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying judge it on the quality, regardless of the creator. You know, and at this point, I was going to put a comment in from the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech, but I think it's, yeah, I don't know how it's going to be taken. But essentially, he was, you know, the quote is, "Be judged on the content of our character, not the colour of our skin." You know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying what Stephen King said is any way comparable to that. So, you know, careful. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying the context is, judge the quality of the work, irrespective of the creator. If the work's good, judge it accordingly. If you are not, if good work is put up there and you are purposely shunning it because it wasn't produced by a straight white male, then yes, absolutely, that is terrible and that should not happen. But I think he was saying, I judged it on the quality. You know, this movie was made and I judged it to be the best. And I didn't care that it was directed by a guy or a woman or somebody who was Hispanic or you know, Latino or Chinese, or it didn't matter. What mattered was, to me, that was all the movies I watched. That was the best one of the year. That gets my vote, and that's how it should be. To me, that is the very essence of equality and diversity. You pick the work based on, was it the best? Yes, it was the best. It was directed by a woman. Brilliant. It was the best. It was directed by a white man. Brilliant. The best. It was directed by a transgender person. Brilliant. It was the best. They get the vote. Doesn't matter. All that stuff shouldn't matter, and it shouldn't. And the fact that it's a conversation at the minute is what's kind of the saddening part. The fact that we have to mention it all the time is because it's not happening. It should just be part of everyday conversation. It shouldn't matter. But the fact that it does is because it's underrepresented at the minute. So yeah, in the context it was said, if I'm correct, and I think he's generally saying, you know, diversity shouldn't matter. It's an issue that's not being dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with. But in the sense that, to me, it doesn't matter. A good movie is a good movie. I think people should cut him some slack. And, you know, this story came out this morning, so by now he may have clarified his comments. Other people might have come to his defence. But for me, that was the context he meant it in. Just how I interpret, just how I read it. And yes, I'm a straight white guy, so maybe I'm not seeing something that other people are seeing. But to me, you know, the artwork is its own thing. And you judge the quality of the work. And if the work is of sufficient quality, it gets your vote. And I'm not going to exclude it because it was produced by a woman. I'm not going to include it because it was produced by a straight white man. I'm going to base it on, is it the best thing in my opinion? And I think that's what he was saying. And I think if that's the case, I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. I don't think you should put work in by anybody because you're trying to hit a quota. And that is by, you know, if there was a movie and it was like, well, it's not the best, but it was produced by a straight white guy, so let's put that in, because I'd rather do that than put in this other one which was directed by a woman, which was a superior film. That is abhorrent and we shouldn't stand for it, but I don't think that's what's happening. I just think at the minute the Oscars are in a tricky position because they have the pool of films they have to pick from. I mixed up through and from then, so it sounded a bit, yeah. The pool they have to pick from is predominantly, you know, straight white male directed or financed or stars. So inevitably, if there's 100 films and 99 are produced by them, and you've got to pick 10 as your best picture. I don't know how many best picture nominations there is this year, but say there's, you know, and again, I'm fudging the numbers a little bit for an example, but you get what I mean. you know, if 90% of them are produced by, you know, a predominantly white cast and financiers and things, you've got to pick 10. Some are going to come from there, more so than they're going to come from, because there's just not the balance yet. So I think if you're going to attack these, you're going to attack the Oscars as such, you need to aim back at the beginning, because like I say, by the time it gets to the Oscars, it's, you know, they can only pick from what's been made, and if not enough are getting made by diverse groups, they haven't got as big a pool to put up against other movies. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. I do think King's been misquoted here, and like I say, by now there's probably a load of tweets out there from maybe he's put another one out saying, look, this is what I meant. I don't know. Leave your answers in the comments. I will check again later on, but for now, those are my thoughts. I think obviously diversity, I'll leave you with this, diversity is a massive issue because it's not fair, and that's why it's still being talked about. Once everything becomes fair and equal, which sadly will probably never happen, but should it, and it's no longer a conversation, but for now it is, because, you know, the world population is not being represented on film. Most people enjoy movies and they want to go and see movies about them or people they can relate to, and at the minute, for the longest time, that's not been the case, especially in regards ethnicity and gender and this kind of how you identify your sexual orientation. There's been so little representation on screen, and that does need to change, absolutely, and hopefully it will. And yeah, so I don't know if these people have, I think some of these comments have been short-sighted, that's all I'll say. I don't think they really considered it. I think they looked at King, and as King is famous, he's been quite critical of other things, people who've adapted his properties and things. Sometimes he really likes it, but if he doesn't, he lets you know. So he's known to be outspoken. I think people have looked at this and gone, oh, he's being outspoken again, and rather than really look at it and go, that's not what he was saying. And again, I could be entirely wrong. He could be, you know, his comments could be, in his mind, no, I think only straight white men should make movies. And in which case, horrific statement. Absolutely. No argument for me, but I don't think that's what he was saying. So I'm defending it. In the context that I've taken it, I think, you know, we need to cut some slack. But let me know what you think. This is a conversation, so let me know what you think. But that's all from me for now. Full-length video on Sunday, let's say today. Time just did get away from me a little bit, so I do apologise, but I do want to put something up for you guys. And that's it. So, response in the comments, let's have a talk about it. Keep it friendly. And until next time, bye for now.